Hey folks, I want to talk to you about this application Readio. I strongly recommend Readio to help grandparents and parents read to their grandchildren remotely when they can't be in the same room. Whether you're living across the country, across the world, or you're just gone on a business trip, Readio makes it easy for you to read to those young ones when you're away. It's a super easy tool that allows for video monitoring across the top of the screen so they can see you and you can see them, as well as having the book prominently displayed, making it easy for you to read to those young ones, or better yet, having them read to you. What I want you guys to do is go to cool-grandpa.us, look for the affiliate link for Readio, click on that link, and sign up today for your free trial.
Do you also find it difficult to build up a meaningful relationship with your grandchildren at a distance? As a long-distance aunt to a 2-year-old in Australia, I wanted to create solutions for the millions of family members who cannot be physically together all the time. This is why I created Peekabond, an app that helps you to connect with young children at a distance. The app works with the following 3 steps. First, we give playful activities suggestions that are based on your child's development stage. These suggestions are science-based and gamified. Secondly, you can create a private family circle. And finally, we'll let you send videos back and forth so you don't have to be live at the same time, and save them in one spot for your grandchild to watch. We've got over 120 content suggestions. You can build a love bank for your grandchildren. And if you go to the Cool Grandpa website and look for the affiliate links, sign up for a newsletter with a lot of inspiring content, or you can try the app for free.
Welcome in. I'm glad you could make it to another episode of the Cool Grandpa podcast. Today's guest is Susan Raisch. Now, Susan is the author of Superheroes Wear Mom Jeans, the Tangled Ball Guide to Anti-Bullying for Parents of Young Children. Susan has an organization in this website called Tangled Ball. The Tangled Ball that she's referring to is all the complicated parts of what bullying really is. You know, it's not just finding the schoolyard bully as we used to know it, somebody that comes over and pushes you off a swing and jumps on the swing and gets going. It's a little bit more complicated than that. And Susan and I dive into this complicated conversation. And I call that out right at the beginning because, boy, there's so many misconceptions about what bullying is, what it isn't, what the effects are. Without further ado, let's just jump into this thing and let's learn from Susan. Hello and welcome to the Cool Grandpa podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. Hi, Susan. Welcome to the Cool Grandpa podcast. I'm so excited that you're here to talk to us about this important topic of bullying. It's something that can be awkward, I think, for us to discuss, but it's something that I think grandparents especially need to be knowing what's going on today, what's happening with all the bullying that we hear about. So I appreciate having you on here and all the research that you're bringing to the program.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy you do this podcast because I think grandparents and I know grandfathers are your particular interest, are really the secret weapon in helping with this issue with kids.
Well, I really appreciate this. One of the things I want to do as we get started is let's go ahead and set a baseline about what does bullying mean, because to me, that's a little bit of a vague word. It could mean anything from my experience about being picked last for dodgeball in elementary school to now it seems like it can mean almost anything in a sense. And I don't think that's how it should really be used, right?
No, I agree. And thank you for asking that question, because I think it can be very overused or very misunderstood. Really, to be true bullying, there's 3 different elements of it. 1 is that it's intentional. 2 is that it is repeated. And the 3rd is that it creates an imbalance of power. So there are many incidences in our children's lives that are disappointing or annoying and may not necessarily be bullying. Those disappointments, it's good to address those too, but to actually be addressed as bullying, it really needs those three elements.
Okay. Well, and I liked, and I hadn't even thought about the imbalance of power. But then when you said that, I jumped back into my elementary school days of like, yeah, because I'm locked in with 28, 30 other kids. There's definitely a pecking order that comes about through that interaction. You don't necessarily want to be on the lower rungs of that, especially whether you're a boy or a girl, but being on the lower end kind of marks you as being somebody that's fair game for making fun of, or nobody else really will come to that rescue, let's say.
No, that's true. And it's feeling very vulnerable. And sometimes that vulnerability can even set you up, for more of that mistreatment. So no, I agree. It's not comfortable to be in that situation. It can erode your confidence if it is not checked. It can really lead to anxiety and, unfortunately, in some kids, depression and self-harm. So it's very, very important that we pay attention.
What's the difference today between bullying that we're hearing about that's going on, whether it's elementary school to high school, and bullying that maybe a lot of us grew up with or were more accustomed to 40, 50 years ago?
Well, there are some similarities and there are some differences. I talk to people and they could be in their 80s, and it is remarkable to me how many are just still have not gotten over incidences in their youth. So, maybe part of it is that it wasn't as talked about then, but it still had very similar impacts. Now, though, of course, we have what we're describing as cyberbullying, where kids don't feel safe. If the bullying was happening in school and the kids are a little older and they're online, there's really no safety in coming home necessarily. They still feel very, very much of a target online. So I would say that is the biggest difference, that has really reared its ugly head probably in the past 15 to 20 years.
Okay, yeah, I think I can understand that and get my head around it a little bit in terms of, you're absolutely right with the social media, with so many kids on smart devices, not having that ability to go for 7 hours to school, have to deal with what you deal there, and then come home. And home is more of a safe place, or you have friends' houses that you could go to, whatever. There's an escape element to that. But with so much everything being online, I think you're right. There's no escape from it. It follows you home, in other words, where it didn't used to so much.
Right. No, that's really true. And, as you know, the name of my website is Tangled Ball, because there are just so many issues intertwined in this, larger issue. But the hope is that we can take out one string at a time. It is messy and it is complicated, but hey, we're grandparents. We're not afraid of messy. But I think that it has changed in that way. But I do think that we have to realize that we do have power as adults to help. There are great experts doing fantastic work. And we have each other, and we have to, it's really important. And I appreciate you doing this podcast, because it is all about sharing information and, and using each other as a resource.
I think, too, one of the big things that I like about having this discussion is being able to talk about the things that grandparents can do to step in and to help through some of these activities and some of these bullying incidents. And one question that I have is, how do we know the difference between something that is just a grandson or granddaughter is going to have a tough year, whatever, they're in with their, the super villain equivalent of themselves, as wonderful as they are, they just schoolroom assignments, whatever, they're in with that kid that's going to give them problems. And how do we know or monitor or follow the difference between, hey, this is just going to be a tough year because you're in with this other person that you don't get along with. And maybe it's not even as much of an imbalance of power, but maybe a rivalry or something similar. How do we help navigate that situation versus in identifying and knowing what bullying is to the point where we definitely have to escalate our involvement in the situation?
That is a great question. And, I just mentioned experts. There are just, dozens of fantastic experts, both on, online safety and behavior in school. But there's one common piece of advice that they all give, and you have probably heard this. It is, they tell a child to tell a trusted adult. So I believe the very first and the most important thing is that you create dialogue, because there's no other way to figure out the depth of the problem if we aren't able to get them to start talking. And I think that's where grandparents, have this wonderful superpower. To me, when I do presentations, I really only share one statistic that I consider to be a very scary statistic. And that is more than half of kids do not tell anyone when they're being mistreated. And they may not be telling anyone for the same reasons we didn't tell anyone when we were growing up. That could be embarrassment. That could be they're afraid that things are going to get worse, that they will be called a tattletale, that an adult will overreact or underreact. And if we understand that and we work out ways and we get creative about opening up these conversations, with our grandchildren, it is just a huge, huge benefit to them number one, be able to disclose what's happening in the school. And from there, and just listening, making sure that it doesn't fall under the bullying umbrella, and talking through difficult situations for them. You can strategize together, but the number one thing is to actually really listen. That there was a fantastic research project a few years ago called the Youth Voice Project. And why I love it is that these researchers, that they interviewed kids from, 5 years old all the way through high school. And they asked them, what is the most effective thing that an adult can do? And across the ages, across the country, the number one thing they said is listening. So I think that is the key. And I think grandparents are in this beautiful position to actually do that because, we're slightly removed from the day-to-day, hard kind of getting through the day. We have a slightly different relationship with our grandchildren than perhaps the parents do. Grandparents are seen as a safe space, which is fantastic. It was so interesting because we had our granddaughter visiting. She's 1 year old, and she was sitting on my husband's lap on the porch. And this gentleman walked up to my husband, walked halfway up to the porch and said, wow, he said, a grandfather is a child's first friend. And I thought that was so powerful. And really made me really reflect on that. And that is probably very true because it's someone who grandchildren automatically might have a different feeling of safety and a different ability to open up.
Oh, and I like what you said there as far as having that foundation for the communication piece, because that's one of the things I think I stress with this podcast is knowing that the interactions that we have with grandchildren lay that foundation. And I often talk about, hey, the getting down and playing cards, or getting down and playing with the grandchildren when they're, a few years old, that's laying the foundation so when they're older in elementary school and middle school and high school, that they feel comfortable coming and talking to you about it. You're not that stranger that's also a relative. Meaning, they don't have any communication other than a holiday when you come by or something along those lines. But they have that playful background with you, and that ability to share, and that ability to talk to you about what's going on.
Oh, I do too. And also to answer your question about, how can you discern whether this is, what level this is, if it's, if it's truly, abusive peer-to-peer mistreatment versus if this is, something, a social emotional blip. And I think that, once you start hearing patterns, if you've observing your grandchild and their behavior is slightly changing, they could be a little angrier, a little more sullen, their eating habits could change. Then that's a tip off, that this is not just your, everyday kind of, friendship problem. So if that's the case, then it is important to ask them if they've talked to anybody about it, whether they've talked to somebody at school, whether they've talked to their parent. And if not, maybe to encourage that and also to help them strategize. Because, I always recommend for an adult not to rush in and try to solve the problem. This is an imbalance of power. Kids need their own power back. Their world is their world. We all went to school, but we didn't go to their school. We don't know the ins and outs. They're the expert on that. We are just leading them through a process of how to improve the situation. And, it could be going up to talk to the school, or to a counselor, etc. But we do that in tandem with the child.
Okay.
And it builds trust. So, we were talking about this connectivity and this communication connectivity. So that connectivity builds trust, and trust builds resilience. And really, resilience is the muscle we want them to develop, because that will help them through this situation, but it's a fantastic thing to have for the rest of their life, that no matter what they come across, this situation might be a very important and powerful teachable moment.
Oh, I like what you said there about resilience. And I know, folks, you can't see me, but I'm bobbing my head like a chicken in the yard, because that really struck home with me in one of the early lessons that my father taught me when I started playing some youth sports. And, I was pretty young. T-ball wasn't any fun. Practices were horrible. I just want to play the games, or soccer or something along those lines. And one of the things that he always drove home was, you made a commitment, you're involved in this, you can't just quit because you're not having fun or that it's difficult, right? And so there's that little bit of that theme of resilience. And I think that's one of the things where grandparents especially want to see that resilience, because we know that, boy, if you think fifth grade is hard, wait until you get into college, or you have to defend a senior thesis, or you have to do something and you have a professor that's not really on your side. We want those kids to be resilient, but I loved how you were talking about making them part of whatever that solution was going to be. If it gets to the point where you need to go talk to a counselor, or you need to go, bring it forward to somebody's attention in a school setting, that they're part of that, because they've also got to take ownership of, hey, this is what's happening to me. And it can't just be, I think, the parent or the grandparent saying, oh, my son or daughter, or my granddaughter, they're being picked on by so-and-so. I think having those kids involved, like you said, it helps build that resiliency, because they're going to have to be in an uncomfortable situation for a little bit to get a better outcome, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've even suggested things. This is a very, very emotional issue. And it's, when a child is on the receiving, a child or a teen, it's very emotional. And it is for the parent too, and the grandparent. No one likes to see their child in pain or their grandchild in pain. So I think it's very important to take a deep breath and even write it out with the child or teen. Spend some time and put it on paper and learn how to actually express themselves in a non-emotional way, because that is going to get them really the support and the help that they need in school, versus running into a school and being angry. It really that backfires. But the child learns so much if we can teach them how to communicate and how to tell the story. And in that way, you can ask questions. Nothing is always, completely, there's always a couple of different perspectives in a story. So we might hear little things when they're talking that they need to be a slightly course corrected on. So it needs to be talked out completely so that we can help them with the gaps that they need. We might be able to realize that that they need to be taught a couple of different skills about how to stand up straight and look someone in the eye and speak with authority. These are all things that we find out the more that they talk and express themselves and really paint the picture.
Oh, I like that analysis piece. And it's one that I don't think I would have come to on my own. In that, what I'm hearing is, and what I see the benefit of that analysis piece of sitting down with the child and going, okay, so tell me the story, tell me what's going on. We oftentimes do that, but we often don't sit down with that analytical view of, hey, did my grandson act like a little bit of a jerk and maybe, set some of this stuff off?
No, that's so true. Kids are growing and, they are trying to, maneuver their way through. And there are multiple ways that we can help them, but we can't help them if we don't know.
Sure. And I think that analysis piece is important too, because it's a really teachable moment to sit there, let the grandson, granddaughter go through what had happened. And then not just, listening is certainly the key to that, but then playing it back to them a little bit. And then being able to point out, like, well, what did you think was going to happen when you did this? When you hid somebody's shoe, what did you think was going to happen? Because it could be just their own teachable moment of like, wow, I didn't think we would escalate, this situation that big, that fast. And of course, it's not trying to shift blame onto the child that's been bullied, but it's a little bit of like, okay, so how did you contribute to the situation a little bit?
I love that, because really what you're saying is, how important it is to lean in with curiosity, and you just cannot go wrong leaning in with curiosity and asking them, questions, and letting them talk it out without judgment, without interrupting them. And the course correction will come, but gathering the information first is so key.
Or being a little just more withdrawn. How do we know the difference, or what are some of the signs that might be telling us, hey, we've got an incident where it's bullying or it's something else that's serious, versus just the normal growing up of an adolescent or of a kid that's just, 1 year we saw them and they were sunny, happy and go lucky, and then now they're kind of withdrawn. And how do we maybe know the difference between when something's going on versus, oh, the kid's just being moody and they're just going through a growth change?
That is a great question. I just think that it has to be, again, to see if there's a pattern, basically. Some of our kids' behavior, we just know is just average to them. It is how we've seen them unfold from preteen to teen. and this is normal behavior for them. I think when it starts moving out of normal behavior for them, I think we kind of get a sense that there might be an outside source. It also could be, if they are extra moody or extra upset, if let's say they're getting off the computer or their phone, we might start to guess that this somebody else is causing the problem. It's almost looking at when these moods are escalating and what situation they've been in. If they get into the car and slam the door and don't want to talk about their day or their friends or whatever, it could be that there's some conflict there. So again, it's just being hyper aware of their typical patterns and what is falling outside of their typical pattern.
Okay. So again, I love this because it goes back to what I've been talking about with grandparents and grandpas in particular, is getting involved early, staying involved, knowing those patterns of what's going on with the grandkids. Because even if you're a long distance grandparent, on a Zoom call or a telephone call or, however that communication goes, if you're deliberate about it and you maintain it, you get to pick up on some of these things. If you don't, you may miss it. And so I think that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And, kids need what I like to call as a deep bench, because none of us can pick up on everything, and it's very difficult to do that. I don't think I picked up on everything from my kids. I now have grandchildren. I tried to do that with my grandchildren, but obviously it's long distance, so I'm obviously going to miss things. But to know that we're part of this circle and take an very active part in the circle, just, it only benefits the child.
I love that concept, the deep bench, that strikes to the sportster in me and all that, I want to flip it a little bit, and we've talked a little bit about the children that are being bullied, but I want to talk a little bit about what are some things, and is this even known, about how grandparents might be able to spot if their grandchild is being a bully? There's got to be some differences, and there's got to be some clues, I would think, to be able to help grandparents pull a grandson or granddaughter aside and go, hey, you know what? You're being really kind of harsh, and you're really being a challenge to work with or be with. If I was one of your friends in your classrooms, you're not being the most sociable person.
That's so true, and I'm glad you brought up 4-year-olds, because the very first expert that I spoke to at the first bullying prevention conference I ever went to was a man from Harvard, a researcher, and he was telling me how young this behavior starts, and he said as young as 4. I know I've heard now experts saying even younger, and I certainly thought that everyone was going to be talking about this, when I was traveling around the country and talking to different experts and schools, et cetera. But nobody was. And I thought, wow, this is so interesting, because if this behavior starts this young, there are so many opportunities to try to correct it. Because really those lessons of learning how to respect yourself and to respect others starts in preschool. And it's understandable. Kids are just exercising their social skills. And as you mentioned, he's going to take a truck someday. Yes. And that's a part of their growing up. But where it has to be stopped is if, let's say it's a ball and grabs a ball from somebody and makes a child cry, but then keeps doing it because that feels powerful to get that emotion out of that child. So again, it's watching for patterns and, and stopping it, trying to nip it in the bud. For different reasons, kids can try this behavior. Again, it's a tangled ball. They could be feeling insecure about something or angry about something, or, Who knows what's happening in the home? Are siblings treating each other well? That's a very important thing to keep an eye out for. That really should not cross the line. I mean, there's something sibling rivalry, but when it gets too aggressive. So are you seeing it in the household? Is it spilling over into the classroom? Those are the times that it is important to step in and say, there is the difference between right and wrong, holding them accountable. That is as big of a gift as helping a child who's on the receiving end of it. Because that child who does not stop that behavior, they are just as susceptible to anxiety and depression and a lot of problems that get carried on through life, through in marriage and holding down a job. So it's very, very key. Grandparents can share stories about when they were growing up and how important it is for that child to understand how hurtful their actions are. If no one tells them, they'll just keep going. It's interesting. There's another statistic that bullying stops. I think it was it could have been even 10 seconds when a peer steps up and stops it. That's really upstander behavior. But the same is true for, grandparents and parents it's not going to stop unless it's corrected.
The thing that struck me is just how important it is to work with the school teachers, the parents, the sports coaches, whatever, and correct that behavior. Because you're right. I mean, at 4 years old, at 5, if these things don't get called out and dealt with appropriately, why wouldn't a kid just keep doing whatever's getting the results? I want this, so I'm just going to go take it from somebody. Somebody is in a weaker position. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because nobody's put a check to them, whether it's a peer or whether it's, an adult in authority doing it correctly.
No, that's so true. And another sad thing is they get in trouble a lot. They get in trouble in the classroom. That means they're not performing to their highest level if you're constantly in trouble, if you're constantly going to the principal's office. So it's great parenting to recognize it and step in and get to the root of it. Sometimes anger in children is really at the root of it is sadness. So it's very important to pay attention to that child and, of course, to discipline, but to get to the heart of what's really bothering them.
Yeah, no, that's great insight because that just struck me as being so true. The other thing too that I think we all have to be careful of is labeling some of these younger kids, as bullies or as bad kids, because I can certainly remember now I was probably 12 or 13, so I was at the right rebellious age. But having this idea of like, okay, well, if they're going to label me as the bad kid, I might as well be the bad kid, and, making sure that we're careful with those things so it doesn't follow. I mean, I forget what it is. It's like calling somebody out for acting like a jerk, but they're not a jerk, if that makes sense.
I am so happy you brought that up because I think labels are just terrible. And there's no way for a child to grow. And, the fact of the matter is a child could be, acting like a bully one day, be the target the next day, be the witness or the, upstander, another day. It can be a very movable behavior. So it's very important not to peg children because then they're not able to move out of it. They can't rise above that kind of behavior if we keep reminding them that, that we're associating who they are with that behavior. And that's just not fair to a child.
Yeah, absolutely. Susan, I've had you on for a while and we've had a great conversation. Is there anything about bullying that I haven't asked you or that you would like to address or bring up before we wrap up the conversation?
I also think that as, grandparents, we also need to be supportive of the parents. We're still their parents. And I think this is I'm humbled by how great parents are right now. They've done so much. They've been handed so much, including having to raise children through COVID, keeping up with what I call the new neighborhood, their offline lives and their online lives. And I actually think supporting the parents is extremely important. I think that, I know that there's some fear for parents on what kids' online lives are going to be like. I really believe that, we can learn how to embrace this new neighborhood. I was not able to teach my children about how to act on social media. Therefore, they never had a mentor. We can always remember who taught us how to ride our first bike, but we don't know of anybody who taught us how to navigate this new neighborhood. So I do think that this, sort of extra understanding and working in partnership with our own children to help them parent their children is really important.
Oh, yeah. I definitely agree with that because this is all brand new to everybody. We're all trying to figure out, are we too much, too little, whatever the case is. So a lot of patience needs to be given. And then you're right. As grandparents, we've got to be able to step in and support the adult parents and back them up and be that tool that they need to bounce ideas off of or to even offer some insights when appropriate for what we're seeing.
And to recognize the great job that they're doing. And I even created a line of product that is t-shirts and sweatshirts, etc., that say that, raising superheroes, teaching superheroes, to empower and to help our own children recognize that they are really doing such an important job. And I think that, right now, all the profit for that is going to help moms and kids in war-torn countries like Ukraine, because I think that, we're superheroes trying to help other superheroes is basically what it's all about.
That sounds awesome. Now, Susan, where can people best connect with you, learn about Tangled Ball and these other activities that you're involved in?
Well, my website is tangledball.com. I am on Facebook and LinkedIn and all the different social platforms, which you can connect with through the website.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to put the links in the show notes for the website as well as some of the other social media links just to make it easy for people that are listening to the show.
That's awesome. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. And Susan, thank you so much for being on the Cool Grandpa podcast. I really did enjoy this conversation, and I think it's really going to help other grandfathers and grandparents out there that hear this to understand a little bit more about bullying and how we can help be part of the solution,
That is wonderful. I so appreciate you paying attention to this. I think it really benefit our families.
What a good conversation with Susan. I really enjoyed learning about what bullying is and isn't. And as a reminder, bullying is something where it's intentional and it's repeated and there's an imbalance of power. So just because those little kindergartners, one of them runs over and grabs a dump truck from another one, or somebody takes a doll from somebody, or somebody, eats somebody else's cookie, that's not necessarily bullying. Although sometimes that phrase and that idea comes to mind. So I really appreciate Susan taking time out of her day to make sure that we're educated and we have a better vocabulary and a better understanding of what's going on out there for our children and our grandchildren. Now, I've got links to Tangled Ball in the show notes, so you can go there, and it's got all of Susan and Tangled Ball's social media links. Those are all on there. And then one thing, too, I just want to call out is that Susan has a Support Ukraine part of her website. So, these folks over in Ukraine could use a helping hand with some of the basics of life. And if you feel so inclined, I want you to go over there and look at the merchandise that Susan has on her website. And go ahead and click on that and show your support for those folks that are going through such a challenging time over in Ukraine. So I hope you've enjoyed this show. I know it's been enlightening. And if you can do me a favor, make sure you please share this with somebody that could really use hearing what Susan has to say about this topic of bullying. Until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.